Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. And the New York Mets are somehow, someway, still in the playoff race after looking like they were finally going to take off as they've done all year. They immediately come back down to earth. They lost 2 out of 3 against the Reds after an impressive series win over the Braves last weekend, and now they're in Philly this weekend. They got game one tonight, off tomorrow because of the World Cup stuff, and then back this weekend with the Mets having to face Christopher Sanchez on Saturday and then Zach Wheeler on Sunday. And it's not going to be an easy series for the Mets. It'll be the first time the Mets have played the Phillies all year. And just hopefully, keep stacking wins, maybe steal a win on Saturday or Sunday, win 2 out of 3, and then come back home for another homestand and continue to keep the momentum rolling. 5.5 games back of the last wild card spot, which yesterday was held by the Nationals after the way games ended yesterday. It's still held by. It's a tie right now with the Nationals and with the Padres for that last wild card spot, and the Cubs. So that logjam continues to happen. With the Diamondbacks a half game back, and then the Pirates, Marlins, Reds, and then the Mets. This would have been this series with the Reds, especially because the Reds have been scuffling a little bit. You have Elly De La Cruz hurt. This would have been the perfect series for the Mets to really get some momentum going. And it just seems like they're still trying to dig themselves out of the hole of the 12-game losing streak. And when this Mets season is all said and done, if they don't make the playoffs, right now I think the Kalshi odds were at like 19% or something like that. If the Mets don't make the playoffs, if you look at the Mets record and you take out that 12-game losing streak and say they go 6-6 in that stretch instead of losing 12 in a row, and they make the playoffs, it's one of those that's baseball Susan type things. It's easy to blame the 12-game losing streak on the entire season, but the way this year has gone, it's just right when the Mets seem to get some momentum going, the wheels fall off, and then everything just goes just back to where it was during the 12-game losing streak. Then they come back up, and it's just been up and down this whole time. But reinforcements are coming, which I think will help the Mets a lot. Senga is back. Alvy is back. You have Mauricio is starting to come back a little bit. Lindor should be back by the end of the month. Luis Robert and Jorge Polanco, I have no idea if we'll ever see them again. And reinforcements coming, and depending on how the reinforcements help, I think is going to factor into a lot as to what the Mets do come time for the trade deadline. Right now, as I said last time, the Mets are in a position I think they should stand pat. And Jeff Passan released his top 100 trade candidates with a good amount of Mets on the list. And Freddie Peralta, Brooks Raley, AJ Minter, Luis Robert, Swaggy, David Peterson, MJ Melendez, and Tyrone Taylor. Tyrone Taylor was probably the most surprising name I saw on that list. To be honest, he was number 100 on the list, so it is what it is. I don't think Tyrone Taylor moves. He very well could, but I think with Alvy and Senga back, and with Lindor coming back, I think that will determine, and how that goes, will determine where the Mets go come time for the trade deadline. So with Alvy being back, had a 3-hit day yesterday. Offensively, he's looked good. I know numbers-wise from the catching position, the Mets pitching staff has done significantly better with Torrens behind the plate as opposed to Alvy. But I consider the Alvy Torrens thing kind of like a 1A, 1B. Like, no matter which one's in the lineup, I think the Mets have a solid chance to win. I've said before that the Mets have a better chance to win with Alvy in the lineup because I do think offensively Alvy has more upside. Defensively, yes, Torrens is probably the better option, but when a team that has been struggling for offense as much as they have, I think that having Alvy in the lineup is the better option. Having him at DH sometimes, or having Torrens at DH while the other one catches, is also an option the Mets can do and have played around with a little bit. Because Torrens is not a bad hitter. It's just there's a little more upside with Alvarez offensively than there is Torrens. But then again, you get more upside defensively with Torrens than you do with Alvarez. So it's kind of if you're in Mendoza's position, based on who you're playing, what the matchups are, kind of where do you want to go from there type move. Senga being back, he made his first start against the Reds. 4 innings, 4 runs. That first inning was a nightmare, but he was fine the last 3 innings. It's kind of similar. I wonder if Senga's in a similar position to Carlos Carrasco. So if you remember the Mets when Carlos Carrasco was here, there was a stretch where he had an ERA of like 8 in the first inning, and then an ERA, a sub-3 ERA the rest of from innings 2 through the rest of his outing. So I do wonder if Senga's going to end up in that boat where if he can just get out of the first inning, he's going to be fine. A lot of Mets fans have pulled the plug. They're sick of seeing Senga. I understand that, but I think Senga, and I'm still standing by this, and it's probably going to age terribly on me. I think Senga is going to be needed for the Mets. He's going to be a much-needed piece in this rotation. The Mets right now, until Senga came back, and until putting Mania back in the rotation, who's starting Game 1 against the Phillies tonight, the Mets had 3 starters because you had Clay Holmes' injury, so now you had McLean, you had Freddie Peralta, and you had Christian Scott. Christian Scott gets hurt, but you got Senga back. David Peterson didn't work out. Jonah Tong, you're still working on him. Zach Thornton only had 1 start, but could get another opportunity later in the year. You need more consistency in the rotation. You cannot keep doing this. You know, we got 3 starters, and we're going to do 2 bullpen games, 3 starters, 2 bullpen games, and just keep doing that. That's not going to help the Mets. They need to solidify that rotation and have push starters to go deeper into games when they can. The pitching has been good this year. Surprising, the pitching has not been terrible. Last year, it was the opposite. The pitching fell apart and the offense kept going, but it didn't matter because the pitching fell apart so bad. This year is kind of the opposite. The pitching has been solid for the most part, especially the bullpen. The bullpen's been fantastic. It's just the offense has been so inconsistent, and it's not clicking all at the same time. So right now, the rotation, in some order, you're looking at... My light just flickered. You're looking at McLean, you're looking at Freddie Peralta, you're looking at Sean Manaea's back in the rotation, Senga's back in the rotation. I don't think the Mets are going to be willing to give Peterson another shot in the rotation. Do they bring up Jonah Tong? Do they give Zach Thornton another shot? Whatever the case is, I think filling out the rotation is going to be key for the Mets. And I think Manaea's been great his last few outings. He's finally got his groove back a little bit, I think. And Senga, I think the Mets are going to have to be patient with Senga because when you come trade deadline time, if he continues to struggle, no one's going to take his money. The Mets are going to have to eat that money, and I think the Mets would rather keep Senga than try and eat that money. It's just a weird position the Mets are in right now because that's why I said they're in a position right now to stand pat because they're in it, but you can make an argument why they should be sellers. They're only 5.5 games back. They have time to make up those 5.5 games. Now, there is a world, yes, where they may not, and there is a world where they can. The consistency needs to start coming together a little more, and I think the Mets will be in a much better position come trade deadline time. They do have a tougher part of their schedule coming up with a lot of teams that are in the playoff race or just on the outside looking in, so that's going to be a tough part for them, and hopefully, they can get some momentum going and start playing better again. I said it before, got to get back to 500 first. Get back to 500, and then you can start going from there. The Mets got the wild card lead down to about 4 games last week before it going back to 5.5, which it is now. But with those trade candidates, that we talked about earlier, looking at this list, I don't know how many of those guys actually end up moving because I think the Mets think they're still, and I would agree with this, they're still in it. If they reach by trade deadline time, if they're 10 games out, then yes, I see those names start moving. But if they're within that 3 to 5 game window, I could see the Mets kind of going for it a little bit. Matt Chapman was one name that was brought up in some rumors. I wouldn't mind that acquisition. The only problem is if the Mets were to get Matt Chapman with Bichette and with Lindor and with Semien at second base, Chapman's probably DHing, or you may have Bichette DHing more often, Lindor DHing more often, and Mark Vientos or Brett Beatty is probably going back in that trade. So it's I don't think the Mets would pull the trigger on that right now. I think, though, because the Giants are expected to sell off everyone, I think the Mets are going to wait till it gets a little closer before they make that decision. But, I mean, I wouldn't hate Matt Chapman coming to the Mets. He's been rumored to come to the Mets before. It's just a matter of, are the Mets going to be in a position where they see themselves as, hey, why don't we add a couple pieces and see if we can make a push at this? Again, if they stay within that 3 to 5 game window of the last wild card spot, I would not be surprised if the Mets stay put or add. If that gap between them and the last wild card spot gets bigger than that and is pushing 8, 9, 10 games come trade deadline time, then absolutely I could see the Mets selling off some guys as with expiring contracts or guys they can try and maximize their value with. So that's kind of the main thing from the trade deadline standpoint. The good thing about this series with the Reds is Nolan McLean's back. That was huge. He's had a couple struggling starts in a row, and he's had to gut through his last 2 outings, but yesterday he was fantastic. 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, did not give up an earned run, gave up an unearned run. And McLean, pitching like McLean at the start of the year, is going to be huge for the Mets the rest of the season, just from having an ace with him and Peralta. Peralta's kind of been up and down. Peralta showed glimpses where he's still that guy, but he's had some struggles of late, and McLean, I think, is able and ready to step into that role of the ace of that rotation that Clay Holmes kind of had that spot the first couple months of the season before he got hurt. So it was nice to see Nolan McLean back to form a little bit against the Reds, and hopefully he can continue it into his next start. The Mets, like we said, heading to Philly this week. You got Manaea starting today against Aaron Nola. It's not the Aaron Nola from a few years ago, but it's still Aaron Nola, so we know how that could be. Saturday, you're going to have kind of a ace-off a little bit, if you want to call it that, between Freddie Peralta and Christopher Sanchez. And then Sunday right now is listed as TBD versus Zach Wheeler. I don't know if the Mets do the opener stuff and piggyback with David Peterson, or if they could bring up Tong or Zach Thornton for a spot start. Most likely going to be a bullpen game, but this would be the first time seeing the Phillies this year. The Mets are kind of on this trend right now where they play up to the better competition and they play down to the teams they should be beating. So I would not be surprised if the Mets have a fantastic series, but given they have to face Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler, I also would not be surprised if they struggle this series. That's just the way, baseball is sometimes. So that's all really going on in Mets land right now. There's a lot going on around Major League Baseball I want to talk about. Starting with 2 main things and then one maybe longer one that I questioned talking about. But the first is Jacob Misiorowski. I was very wrong. I think last episode I said that as the season ended today and I had a vote, I would vote Christopher Sanchez for the Cy Young. I take that back. I think I was 1,000% wrong. I would vote for Jacob Misiorowski. Complete game, 1-hit shutout, 15 strikeouts, faced 1 over the minimum, allowed that 1 hit, and also was a Maddox. So if you don't know what a Maddox is a complete game, shutout, in under 100 pitches. And he's throwing 103 at the end of the game, touching 104.5. Fastest pitch ever recorded by a starting pitcher. There was a little bit of Twitter controversy with that about him throwing 105, which technically people are right. He did not throw 105. He threw 104.5. You can't just round up to saying he threw 105 miles an hour. That's just not how that works. But it is the fastest by a starter in baseball history. The fastest pitch in baseball history is Aroldis Chapman. It was 105.6, I want to say. 105 point something back when he was with the Reds. And he's still throwing very hard. I'm very interested to see where Chapman goes come trade deadline time, especially with the rumors of if he were to go to the Yankees and he would need a written apology from the Yankees, whatever drama is going on with that. So Chapman will be a name to watch come trade deadline time, and really anyone on the Red Sox. So that will be that'll be a fun one to watch. But Jacob Misiorowski, what he is doing right now is unbelievable, and it's unbelievable to the fact that not only is he dominating the way he is, but he's throwing as hard as he is for as long as he is. When he's throwing almost 100 pitches, and he's ending the night on 103. Like, that's just pure, utter domination. He had a game score of 100, and it was just insane. That was like it was the best start in baseball, to me, one of the best starts in baseball history that wasn't a perfect game or no-hitter. If not the best start in baseball history that wasn't a perfect game or no-hitter. It's just, what he is doing is just out of this world, and he's the reason the Brewers are in the position they're in right now. I know there's a lot of flack, and I gave that flack last year over his All-Star nod, and I think that was kind of warranted. But coming into this year, I think is a completely different game. Now that he has a season under his belt and has been here for more than 30 seconds, I think Jacob Misiorowski should arguably be starting the All-Star game. Although it is in Philly this year, if I'm not mistaken. So I wouldn't be surprised if Christopher Sanchez gets the nod because of that. And then Misiorowski's the first guy out of the bullpen. So that'll be a decision for Dave Roberts. And again, I think it probably should be Jacob Misiorowski, but I wouldn't be surprised if Christopher Sanchez starts it because it's in Philly. And it's just, Misiorowski is just, it's insane what he is doing. Let me make sure that the All-Star game is actually in Philly. That'd be really embarrassing if I just said that and it's not there. It is in Philly. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Christopher Sanchez gets to start because of that. But Jacob Misiorowski, I think right now, I take it back what I said last time. Jacob Misiorowski is the best pitcher in baseball. And I think he borderline, obviously you have to finish the season, but borderline sealed the Cy Young with that start. It is just insane what he is doing. The next thing is Home Run Derby. We had a late update last night from Evan Drellick about the Home Run Derby, and they are ditching the clock for it. So the new Home Run Derby format will feature the first round, 20 swings, second round, 15 swings. The championship will be 15 swings. Last pitch each round is, quote, swing until you don't go deep. Which, I'm happy with this, and I'm not happy with this at the same time. So I'm happy with it because I did not like the clock. It was just, I didn't vibe with it. It was very hard from a viewer standpoint. It's very hard to keep up with it because guys are just trying to go, 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 go. You have the camera. They're supposed to wait for the ball to land before they swing again, but it's never enforced. It's enforced at weird times, and by the time you're watching the ball where it goes, they've already hit 2 more into the air. I think the swings from a viewer standpoint are going to make it a lot more enjoyable. And I just think that Major League Baseball needs to bring back the 10 outs that they used to do. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to make the All-Star game more better for the fans. They're trying to make it more engaging. And I do think the Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend is still the best of the 4 major sports, especially because of the Home Run Derby, although the NHL is slowly creeping up with that 4 Nations Cup. That was awesome. So I get they're trying to keep changing it because they're trying to keep more fans involved, get more fans to watch. Ever since they took away the meaning of the All-Star game where it determined home field advantage for the World Series, the Home Run Derby and All-Star game have just been completely different. And I know a lot of people say how stupid it is that the All-Star game meant something like that, but I think that you have to put some sort of incentive on it for it to be watchable for fans. And I think that goes for all 4 major sports. There has to be some incentive in it for the guys to try a little bit so that fans can enjoy it. Because it's the purpose of the All-Star game. You're celebrating the best of the best of your sport. You're celebrating the game itself. It just, you want fans to enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun atmosphere. Yes, it's supposed to be laid back, and you don't want guys to get hurt doing it and stuff like that, but there's got to be some way we can find to make it a little more incentivized, that guys try a little more. And I like that baseball's at least trying different things. They keep changing it. It seems every single year they keep changing the rules. But I think going back to the out system, the 10 out system that it used to be when we were all growing up, I think is going to be the better way for Major League Baseball going forward. And it's going to this is going to incentivize, to me, the more true power hitters to want to do it, because it's going to be based off power and not stamina. You're not trying to hit as many as you can in 2 minutes. You have 15 swings, and you're just trying to hit absolute tanks with those 15 swings. You know when it ends. So that's the part where I kind of am in that love-hate in the middle of it. And I appreciate that baseball's at least trying to keep modifying things and keep changing things to try and see how they can make it better and make it work for everyone. But, that is that's baseball right now. It's in a weird position, especially with these labor union negotiations coming up this off season. It's in a tough spot right now. So making these changes, trying to draw younger fans, trying to bring more fans into the ballpark and into watching games is going to be a big thing for Major League Baseball. The last thing I want to talk about today, I was debating even talking about it at all, but considering how big of a story it has become, I feel like I gotta, and I'm trying not to get canceled, so I'm going to choose my words very carefully, because I am trying to remain as neutral as possible in all of this, and that is the drama going on with the San Francisco Giants. So if you have not seen it, the other night the Giants held their annual Pride Night, and Landon Raup, I hope I said his name right, JT Brubaker and Ryan Walker were in the media. So Raup and Brubaker put a Bible verse on their pride caps, and Ryan Walker, if I remember this when I was reading it, if I remember this correctly, did not wear a pride cap. He wore a regular Giants cap. Because if you saw the caps, so it's like the Giants logo, but instead of the orange that if you're watching on YouTube, I'm like doing it as if I'm holding the hat. But that orange SF was the rainbow pride flag. And that's what the teams that have done their Pride Nights already, that's how they've done it. The Dodgers did the same thing. Instead of the white LA, it was the LA, but it was the rainbow flag color pattern. So that, for their Pride Night, Raup and Brubaker put a Bible verse next to the logo, and Ryan Walker just wore a regular Giants cap. That caused a huge backlash media-wise that got all the way up to the point where the vice president was commenting on it. Then you had the other night, Ryan Thompson, who's a reliever on the Diamondbacks, advocating for them, saying they're not saying they're against something, they're saying they're for something in a different way. MLB, in between that frame of the Giants Pride Night and Ryan Thompson backing up those Giants pitchers, Major League Baseball issued a warning to those Giants pitchers, to Raup, Brubaker, and Walker, about putting personal messages on their caps. More so, again, to Raup and Brubaker. I feel like I'm definitely saying his name wrong. Is it Raup or Roop? Definitely saying that wrong, and I apologize. Specifically to them, because they wrote a Bible verse on their cap, and Walker, again, was just wearing the regular San Francisco Giants cap. Major League Baseball telling them that they can't do that because it violates the uniform policy. And by rule, yes. I looked at Major League Baseball's rules. It does say, you cannot put it's considered, quote unquote, not word for word, but paraphrasing, desecrating the uniform. Like, you can't write your own personal messages on it and things like that. You can't "Hi Mom, I love you" on your cap. You can't do that. Here's where I think Major League Baseball messed up. Is doing that, at least publicly. And the reason I say that is because this has happened multiple times before, not just with Pride Night, with other situations going on in the world where players have done this, and in the media, it did not garner the attention that it has. Clayton Kershaw did the same thing. I believe it was the same Bible verse, actually, on the Dodgers Pride Night 2 years ago? It was either last year or 2 years ago. You had, I believe it was the 2021 Major League Baseball All-Star Game, where Adolis Garcia and Aroldis Chapman, who are both from Cuba, wrote on their caps SOS Cuba, because at the time there was a lot of civil unrest going on in Cuba. You've had, I'm trying to think of some other instances. Uh, was it Blake Trinan or a different reliever? When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he had something written on his cap. We've seen players before, if they lose someone, write something on their cap. Or if they have if they lose a relative or something like that, they write something small on their cap. We've seen it before. And if that violates the rule, the Major League Baseball rule, that is fine. The problem is, it was not in the media that Major League Baseball gave them that verbal warning when that happened. This time it was. And that's where I think Major League Baseball messed up. Because if you even handled those other situations privately, why didn't you handle this one privately? Because you brought forth a bunch of negative PR on you, and now you have evenly split everyone's opinion on this. They are either mad at you being Major League Baseball, for giving them that warning like that and making it public knowledge when guys are putting something in there that for their religious beliefs on their cap, and then the other side who are on the Giants player side and Ryan Thompson on the Diamondbacks side over why is everyone making a big deal out of this. So I think Major League Baseball, if it violates the rule, that should have been addressed privately, especially if all these other instances, again, if they were even addressed. I don't even know if Major League Baseball addressed Adolis Garcia and Aroldis Chapman. The wind is, if you live in New York, the wind is whipping today. I don't even know if Major League Baseball ever addressed Adolis Garcia and Aroldis Chapman when they put SOS Cuba on their cap. So it's the inconsistency that I had a problem with, was why is it okay for all these other guys to write stuff on their cap, but now when these guys do it, now you're going to enforce the uniform rule. Is it because, it's how you've always done it and this one just happened to be in the media, or is it because of what they wrote on their hat as to why Major League Baseball is saying something? I think this is getting blown way out of proportion. I don't want to go down that wormhole because I'm not in the business of trying to get canceled, and I'm just not what, people don't want to. They want to listen to people talk about baseball. They want to listen to people talk about sports. They want to get away from all that stuff. I do think it's being blown out of proportion, though, because and the reason I say that is because this has happened before, and no one says anything until it goes against what they believe in. If they it's a kind of a lose-lose situation for those Giants pitchers, because if they just refuse to wear the cap and they just wear the regular San Francisco Giants cap, they're getting just as much negative media as they are with putting the Bible verse on their hat. So it's a lose-lose for them. And it's just, I don't want to go in too much on this because it's not what people are here for, and I don't want to get myself in any trouble. Major League Baseball messed up. If they were going to address them for violating the uniform rules, then they should have done so privately. The fact that it got into the media the way they did and making these guys look like villains is just crazy to me. Every year we run into this with Pride Night because the Texas Rangers are the only team in Major League Baseball that don't have a Pride Night, and then this year they were doing a Faith and Family Night, so instead of a Pride Night, and that became a whole thing. So it's kind of just the world we're living in right now, and I hope that it's a tough one for me to comment anymore on. I act like my opinion matters at all in this situation, but I just don't think Major League Baseball handled that appropriately. I think that in the past, 2 years ago or whatever it was with Clayton Kershaw, did the same exact thing. It was not in the media that Major League Baseball gave him a verbal warning. People were still up in arms. You had people split over agreeing with Kershaw and against Kershaw. But the league wasn't involved in it at all. And I think that's where Major League Baseball screwed up, was getting involved in it the way that they did. So, that's all. Again, I really want to comment on it because, again, I don't want to get myself in any trouble, and it's just easier to steer clear of that stuff. So, again, not a good decision on Major League Baseball, and I try to remain neutral and stuff like that because it's just easier that way. But I think it's getting blown into a much bigger deal than it needs to be. But that is going to wrap it up for this week on Raise the Apple. Mets are continuing their road trip, finalizing their road trip with 3 games in Philly, starting tonight, off day tomorrow because of the World Cup, which is being held at Lincoln Financial Field, which is where the Eagles play. So because of that, that's why there's that weird off day in the middle. So tonight, off tomorrow, then Saturday, Sunday, and then the Mets return home, I believe. I believe that's the Cubs week. Let me double check. Before the Mets return home for 4 games with the Cubs and 3 games with the Phillies before another road trip into July. So Francisco Lindor should be back soon. Ronnie Mauricio is slowly getting there as well. Hopefully Senga can find his groove again and we can see that rookie year Senga back in action for the Mets. Make sure you subscribe on Twitter, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube at RTA_pod. Thank you for tuning in, and let's go Mets.